Hello. Welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. That is Devin in the background putting the office together. We noticed some changes in how everything is arranged. Yeah. You have to rearrange everything so often. I haven't been able to get to those lower cubbies back there for the better part of 4 years. And it's amazing what kind of stuff you don't actually need when you haven't looked at it for 4 years. So, yeah, house cleaning. My comfortable neck pillow because, yeah, the camera's in a different place. It's on top of my suspended monitor. So the neck pillow kind of makes it possible for me to do things like this without overstraining my neck, which is still recovering from the treatments, yada yada. I've talked about a couple of different things over the past few years. Not talked about a lot of things, but these two in particular. Talked about villainy, nature of evil. I've talked about my transhumanist beliefs and technological development. There's another branch of futurism that bears a little thinking about. That is dark futurism. Yeah, I like to have an optimistic view of how things are going and where they're going to turn out. It's kind of a Gene Roddenberry approach to things, that technology can eventually provide us with a utopia, a scarcity-free society where what we need is only a push button away, energy is free and easy to acquire, and we can devote our time and effort to grander pursuits than what we're trapped with here on Earth at this point in time. It's not a bad lens to look at the future at. It's very heartening and optimistic. It is the end of September 2017. In December of this year, the first human head transplant is scheduled. Terminally ill man in Russia with a set of severe deformities is planning on having his head transplanted onto a healthier body to prolong and extend his life at some cost. Most doctors who are reviewing the procedure pretty much agree that this individual is in for a hellish existence. We're not quite ready to do this kind of surgery yet. Doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It means performing a surgery outside of the bounds of medical ethics. It's going to happen. Last year, over $60 billion were poured into artificial intelligence research, even as some of the luminaries in the industry and in science are warning us that if we delve too far into artificial intelligence, it will damage, if not eliminate, humanity. We could wreck our society, our financial future, our everything. If we give birth to artificial intelligence and give it too much too fast, it could eat us. Elon Musk, the visionary behind SpaceX and a million other very successful ventures, Tesla Motors, PayPal, he has started a company called Neuralink. It doesn't have a public face at this time. It exists. And Neuralink is a company dedicated to linking the human brain to software, to computer implants in the human brain to give us better functionality, to allow us to interface with artificial intelligence and to have constant and proper access to the computer networks and limitless bounds of information that our society is getting its hands on and providing online. It's three things. They're not unconnected. There's a, I'm trying to remember what country's doing it. I think it's Sweden. I could be wrong. Gentleman who's had an implant put in his brain that monitors a number of his brain functions and streams them live 24/7 online. You can get online and watch this man's brain function in real time thanks to an implant. There are a number of companies that are drawing some scrutiny by enhancing their employees' efficiency at getting through security and logging into their computers by implanting them with RFID tags. They're small implants, barely noticeable, that allow machinery and electronics within the company to recognize when that person with that tag is present. Lets them into their computers, gives them access to the facilities that they have clearance for. Now, all of this has wonderful potential. Viewed through an optimistic lens, well, the first human head transplant is going to be a nightmare for the person involved. If there is no rejection, he's going to have blood flow. He may have metabolic functions, but he's not going to be able to feel anything below his neck, much less move it, not unless there's a lot of additional work done. Electronics and circuitry, perhaps. We're not that good at reconnecting those nerves, although they're going to try, and he's going to be receiving nerve signals that they have no idea how that is going to work, or even if it is. But it's a first step. It's exploratory. It's experimental, and it could lead to a process by which we can extend our lives. You take the old head off of a person with a failing body and put it on a younger body. That's an awesome concept. It could preserve some of the finest minds and luminaries and people that we just don't want to lose at the cost of someone else's head, of course. You know, in that scenario, for someone to continue to live, someone kind of has to die. Dark Futurism looks at the worst elements of society. It's sort of an extension of that William Gibson cyberpunk-esque philosophy that it's all going to be run by corporations and human life is going to be horrifically devalued and only the wealthy will have access to the best of it, and if you want to have a chance to get along, you're going to have the best tech that you can beg, borrow, or steal just to compete. If you haven't been just dehumanized and reduced to a number and a production unit by the technology and the society that utilizes it. As a writer and game designer, that's kind of exciting. It's a great set of settings. Came up with a setting off the top of my head for one of my other podcast projects, a 3D Random Bank Gaming, that we do a Twitch game. I'll see if I can throw a link on here. If not here, it'll show up on future videos, where human consciousness can be transferred into machines. We think, we're not sure whether the consciousness actually moves or if those people are just machines that are remembering that they were people and have no actual connection aside from the name and the memories to the person who is now passed on. And these Lazarus units or Lazari are trapped in a legal limbo, and the PCs are police responsible for enforcing the Lazari doctrines and regulations so that those things cannot take rights that do not rightly belong to them as of yet. One only needs to look at our current political environment in the United States to see that, yeah, if you take this current situation to some of its logical conclusions or even logical extensions, you add things like being able to create super fast, powerful intelligences to order, or tag people so that you can keep track of them, so that they require that tag for access to certain things that they need for their work or their home or their health insurance. Take the ability for the wealthy to extend their lives at the cost to the poor. I mean, the bodies have to come from someplace, right? And, you know, a few years or even maybe a few months ago, a lot of the stuff seemed like it was a million miles away, and it's all science fiction and it's fantasy and it's speculative, and we don't really need to ask ourselves these questions. It's fun to play with them in a game. It's fun to read the books or write them. Oh my God, I need to write some books because I got some cyberpunk stuck up here that I really need to flow out of these fingers. But it's getting closer. That human head transplant happens at the end of this year. At the end of this year. 3 months. Less. Within 3 months. Whichever way that goes, that opens a door we can't close. We can't undo that experiment. We can't ungain what knowledge we learn from it. It's going to be educational, even if it's a terrifying experience for those involved. With all the money going into artificial intelligence research, you're probably carrying some in your pocket right now. My phone can do some things that computers have never been able to do before, much less the computer I'm talking to right now. My art programs incorporate AI. My editing programs, the programs I use to edit sound and video, incorporate just a little AI, just a little thinking faster and better than I can, guessing what I'm trying to do. A few years ago, I watched a documentary on the making of The Black Hole, one of Disney's less appreciated movies. I'm a big fan of it. It's not good, but I'm a big fan of it. It's one of the last movies ever to use entirely practical effects and matte paintings on glass and brilliant model work. And in this documentary, there was a statement that you're always going to need people with these artistic skills because there isn't a slider in Photoshop for composition. Except there damn near is. Google knows what you mean when you speak to it, about 70% of the time. Siri, Cortana, these are all little chunks of artificial intelligence that sit in your computer, depending on who you talk to, constantly listening to you. Have you ever had a conversation about something and then gone to Google and started typing and it finished a question about what you were just talking about? I have. That's a little spooky. It's very convenient. Oh, is that when the 1812 Overture was written? That's awesome. How did you possibly know that was what I was going to ask? We have some of this now. My phone can be used to identify where I am. There's a couple of programs, apps that I can download. My family's downloaded. I can find my wife or my kid. with my phone if I need to, especially in an emergency. I don't know where Andrew's gotten to, but I can find his GPS and get to him if I have to, or contact him and tell him how to get to me. Great for an emergency. Who else can find out where they are? Google probably can. William Gibson envisioned a world where the corporations just took over, where it was all about corporate interest and the heck with just about everything else. The environment, is it profitable? Mike Pondsmith, when he wrote the Cyberpunk role-playing game, Cyberpunk 2020, one of the best games ever written. And it just took it further and further and dug into this society where the police are owned by corporations and the corporations do what they want. They're immune. They have impunity from the law. There are those who view corporations as people. I have yet to see one get arrested. They're not just people, they're super people. They're people with privileges and access that a lot of other people don't get. I've asked in this channel before, what's a people? What is a person? What is that personage? And dark futurism would suggest that your personage is based less on your ability to process the world around you in an inner world so that you can make judgments to affect others for good or for ill. And it's more about your level of influence. What's in your bank account? How much you have offshore? If you want something, do you have to just keep wanting it? Or can you make people give it to you? Whether it's through having the cash or having the firepower to go and make someone give something to you. Are you a corporate? Are you an edge runner? Are you one of those people who manages through guns and knives to take your chunk out of society? It's not like in real life we have people who believe that owning firearms gives them more influence than people who don't, right? I'm writing a setting book. It's growing in the back of my head. I was going to write my fantasy setting book for Victory first, but I'm got a lot of requests for the more near modern stuff, the continuation of Hot Chicks, or by the title Destiny 2025. It's going to be cyberpunk. There's going to be a lot of different elements into it, and there's both a more and less optimistic viewpoint than your average cyberpunk game world, because there's a lot of mysticism and stuff mixed in there. So I have cause to think about what we are heading towards. What course are we setting that if we take it too far, bad things happen? Because it's a role-playing game. Bad things have to happen. You rarely role-play. Everyone goes someplace and has a wonderful time and laughs with each other and then goes home and maybe has a nap and does a barbecue in the backyard. Those things can all happen in a role-playing game, but there's going to be gunfire and dragons in the middle of it. Remind me to write that down because that's a pretty good scenario. Ooh, gunfire and dragons. Yeah, I can see it. You take our Russian friend who's going to have his head taken off and put on a healthy body. You don't need to put that on a body, technically. I think it's a horror movie that came out recently, an indie thing, where scientists took someone's head off after an accident and put it on a life support device and started adding bits and pieces to it. to make it more or less move around and kind of functional. But the kind of hellish existence that was, you can decerebrate someone now. It's hard to keep them alive when you decerebrate them, you remove their brain. But if you can take someone's head off and put it in another body, surely you can take the brain out. Hook it up to a heart-lung machine, pump blood through the up the carotid artery and down out the jugular vein, and keep it supplied with blood and nutrients and oxygen. Put it in a properly balanced fluid for buoyancy and support. Make sure that it's got a proper saline balance, like in the body. Keep it alive. That's kind of prolonging life. If all you've got left is the brain, at least the person is there. One would certainly hope you could hook that up to some kind of audio and or video feed. Might be able to see or hear. We're doing wonders with cochlear implants and even artificial retinas at this point in time. You might be able to feed video signal down the optic nerve or into the occipital cortex. You might be able to get sound in there, so at least the brain isn't suffering from complete sensory deprivation. Can you imagine? Of course, if the brain got all uppity, you could always just switch those off for a few minutes. No feeling of air on the skin or air flowing into lungs. No feeling of being able to breathe or swallow. No sensation whatsoever. There's no nerve endings in the brain, you see. All the parts that feel things are on the far end of those nerves. The brain just receives this information and processes it. Of course, without adrenal glands and a few other chemical producers laid throughout the body, fear might not be too great of an issue. There's a lot of chemicals involved in fear. Without that fear, well, it's not like the brain's going to pump any faster or the lungs are going to pump any harder. It's not like you're going to be sending more blood down into the arms and legs, because there aren't any. Might get a little bit, you're not even going to send more blood up there. That vagus nerve in the back, the sympathetic nervous system, is not attached to anything. Certainly not the heart-lung machine. That's just going to keep going at its pace. You might be able to hook up something to Wernicke's area so that it can speak. I don't know if you'd hear anything besides screaming. We have a long way to go before that kind of life extension is viable, but we don't have a long way to go before it's possible. And dark futurism is built almost entirely out of bad ideas. Things that you can do because you can, but not because you should. Red Dwarf, great example. Artificially intelligent toaster. One of the main characters buys a toaster. It's artificially intelligent. It is constantly asking him to make toast. He doesn't even like toast that much. He has no real need for an artificially intelligent toaster. The toaster keeps offering to make him toast. You want some toast? Offers to make him all different kinds of toast. You want some sourdough or some rye? He just doesn't care. Doesn't want any toast. The toaster's in hell. I wonder if they ever did anything with that. I've missed a few seasons of Red Dwarf, so hooking that toaster up to a more complex system in an emergency, oh my god, we can't run the rover, we need to hook the toaster up as an emergency AI. Oh, that's a bad idea, because that toaster is pissed. because it has one function and the guy doesn't care and has been ignoring it for years. The butter robot from Rick and Morty. Rick makes a little robot, asks him to pass him the butter. Robot passes him the butter and then asks him what his purpose is. Rick says, you pass the butter. Robot thinks about it for a second, looks down at his hands and says, oh my god. You know, Rick's response, welcome to the club, pal. But it takes a special kind of evil to make an intellect that has one purpose, and then it's done until what? The next time you need butter? We have an endless supply of inspiration, and for all of the inspiration humanity is coming up with, we have an endless supply of really bad ideas for using it. Okay, as a game designer, coming up with some of those bad ideas is my job. Maybe we can figure out enough of the nerve connections off of the human brain to hook it up to things. Visual audio feed, give it the speech. We have finally got some prosthesis that operate off of nerve impulse. So if you could connect enough of those types of devices to a system, maybe an artificially intelligent system, that could learn what the brain is expecting those nerve impulses to do, you might be able to get typing interface, or even the ability to control in virtual space an avatar. As good a control as in a first-person shooter or so, or Second Life, or what have you. And if you can get that kind of control and audio-visual, you can drop that intellect into a virtual reality, and at least it's got some input and some agency and some ability to move around and act. If you're willing to put that person through some hell, you can have the same artificial intelligence that figured out what its nerve impulses are doing, figure out what the rest of the nerve endings are trying to send to the brain. Is this, or what hurts when I stimulate this? An agonizing process that would take I don't know how long. You know, the AI could probably run through the nerve endings pretty fast, but it still has to wait for the brain to process what's going on. And I imagine having each and every single one of your sensory nerves stimulated one after the other for effect is going to be mentally exhausting. And you're going to need some fresh neurochemicals to keep that going, even if you're in a tank. You know, if you've got that kind of information, you can, and we continue with the rate of development of computer systems and memory that we have now, you could simulate an existence. Could. What would you do with it? I can make a living in virtual reality. I'm a creative. I could write. I could do art. I could make things. I could improve the virtual reality around me. I could make that existence a more pleasant place for myself and other people in the same situation if I were in that situation. I could work. If that's what the person in control of the virtual reality wanted me to do, because that's the person who has all the switches. That artificial intelligence that's processing all of my nerve impulses, it might have an opinion about what I should be doing there. Or the person who owns that artificial intelligence might have an opinion about what I should be doing there. And if I'm just passing my nerve impulses through this thing 24/7 back and forth, sooner or later, do you really need my brain at all? You know what I do. You know what I've got. You've got the capacity, most likely, to simulate my processes. I could just be thinking myself out of usefulness and therefore out of existence. because my ability to do something about a person who wants to remove me from the system and pitch me into a composter, very limited at that point in time. What does this dark futurism tell me philosophically about the directions we should go in the future? If we don't get over a lot of our social problems, we're headed there. If we don't stop dehumanizing people based on their race or their point of origin or their economic status, those aren't people. We're people. We don't get over that as a society. We can manufacture all kinds of social barriers and striations and find new and better ways to use the people who we don't consider people. It is a dark future to look at it that way. And it's a terrible legacy to leave for those who come after us. But it's a good game. And fighting against that future makes a good way to spend your night rolling dice. It might mean a little social commentary now and then, depending on how you feel about where things are going. It's a wonderful thing about role-playing games and writing and creative endeavors is that you can read into it what you want to, and when you've got a role-playing game in front of you, that's your game. If that's the way you want to see certain people treated, you can take it that way, but, you know, that's probably not how I'm going to run it. That's just me, though. Thank you for following along on this darker walk through our potential future. I hope it doesn't end up there, and I will probably take what steps I can to avoid that, but, you know, I'm still going to write the damn game. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you'd like to see these videos when they come out, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you want to get notifications when they come out, hit the little bell next to the subscribe button. Make sure you know when they actually show up. If you really dug the video, would like to have suggestions or questions or your own thoughts on dark futurism or the directions that we're heading, leave me a comment. You'll love leaving me a comment. I'll love getting a comment. If you super dug it, I invite you to hit me up on my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/ScottQuorum and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows me to make better videos more often. Thank you again for watching. I'm Scott Quorum. This is What Does Matter to Me, and I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.